Hello and welcome. Today we've got Michael Jaco, who's a former CIA and Navy SEAL. And today we're going to be discussing the possible and rumors that we're hearing about a nuclear war in Poland and if it's going to outbreak or not, or if it's just fear mongering. We're going to talk about Israel and Hamas and the Democrats and also the protests that's happening at universities and much more. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Instagram channel at nicholas.veniamin, where you can follow all my daily newsreels. Michael, thank you so much for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to?
Doing really good, Nicholas. Thanks for having me back on. Been very busy, getting ready to do some events up in Ohio with Scott McKay and speaking. And so we're getting people prepared for the possibility of, shortages and so forth. So we're in, like you talked about, rumors of war and so forth. It looks like, so from one of my remote views many months ago, probably half a year or more ago, I saw a nuclear event in Poland. And now we're having a lot of experts that are starting to come out. CIA analysts are coming out and saying, former CIA analysts are coming out and saying that they see the potential for tactical nuclear weapons, which I saw as well. And then former high-ranking military officers are saying the same thing. So is it basically just fear mongering, or is it trying to alert the public that this is a possibility, and if we start to push back on it, we can stop it? I will tell you from my experience of having been in the CIA and the military for 35 years, and now on the other side of this, talking about this and watching the action, that it does make an impact when people stand up and say enough. Because I've seen this over and over again. They continually push and push and push and push until people stand up and say no more. So right now we're seeing France. France said several months ago that they were looking at sending troops to Ukraine. And all the other NATO countries were like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. Well, France has now sent troops to Ukraine. They've sent, and the way you can get around, it's the same way they got around it in Vietnam, is they sent the French Foreign Legion, right? So the United States gets around it by sending special forces as advisors. All right, so we know that's been going on because we've heard that Navy SEALs and so forth were in the capital of Kyiv as advisors. So that's how we started into Vietnam. Now, Vietnam basically was China going, okay, we like to keep a little border, distance between the West and our country. So Vietnam was that thing. North Korea was that thing, to keep a distance from the West. Now, Ukraine has been that thing to keep distance from the West for Russia. So this is the continual attempt at the Western forces, if you will, to dominate the entire world. And there are certain countries, whether you agree with their communism or not. I never agree with Russia's communism, and Russia's communism has collapsed, and now it's back to a republic. Is China's communism good? No, absolutely not. They do horrific things to this one religious group there. I just saw a beautiful ballet and entertainment from Shenzhen, I think it was the name of this company, that did a beautiful dance entertainment thing here in Tampa area that I'm at. And it was the same thing that I saw with the Russian ballet, the Bolshoi ballet, back when I was a young Navy SEAL that was learning to carry a backpack nuclear bomb and jumping into Russia to blow stuff up. So I was back then. Why are we finding these people that are just like us? And it's the same thing with the Chinese. We have many Chinese all over the world. Why do we think that we need to fight the Chinese? Why in Taiwan? Why do we think we need to fight the Russians in Ukraine? It's not us. It's not us. It's this horrific group that is trying to control the world. Mm-hmm. We push back on them, and they will stop their aggression. Now, we've already seen the U.S. is saying that they're going to send nuclear weapons to Poland, and Poland has said they're ready for them. That's like what happened in the U.S., where Russia was starting to send, or was talking about sending, nuclear weapons to Cuba. We said, So it's the same. It's almost like the same situation again, but the roles are reversed. So we didn't think it was a good thing. Why do we think it's a good thing that we do it to Russia now? It is not. It's never a good thing. And there are people that say that the reason why President Robert Kennedy died was because he didn't go along with basically the military-industrial complex, which wanted to have a war with Russia. So they assassinated him, right? So we saw that President Trump was basically pushed out of office because he was one of the only presidents in the U.S. history where there wasn't major conflict. So they had to get rid of him because they have to have these conflicts because that's how they make money. That's how they control the world. That's how they create fear and they control consciousness. So we are seeing this starting to heat up now. In the U.S., we had said that we weren't going to put any troops in Ukraine. Well, just recently, just in the last few hours or so, Democrat leader, House Leader Hakeem Jeffries, said that should Russia succeed in its war on Ukraine, the United States will likely have to intervene with more than just money, but also with troops. So here we are. We're opening that door. We're starting to talk that talk. And there's going to be new advisors that are going to Kyiv, just like new advisors went to Ukraine when JFK was assassinated. Donald Trump was removed from office, and now we're starting to heat these wars up again. So I mean, we can look through history. We're doomed to repeat history if we don't learn the lessons from history. So the lessons are there. Will we repeat them? So this time, I think we could go as far as nuclear war.
Back in the 1990s, there was an interview with George Soros where he mentioned that he funded money into Ukraine. And also, Joe Biden is very much involved with Ukraine and has business dealings there. So this is why the Democrats, who are all in one team, they're in one club here, who are wanting, this is the reason why they want to send troops over there. So what do you think will happen with Ukraine?
Well, Ukraine is a known Nazi area. The Nazis during World War II were welcomed by Ukrainians in the eastern portion, Poland, in the western portion of Poland. That's where all the concentration camps were. So the Nazis in Ukraine welcome all the way to Kyiv to Kharkiv, which looks like Kharkiv is going to come under attack by Russia pretty soon here. So we see German troops and Ukrainian troops that have basically put on German uniforms marching through the streets of Kyiv, and throughout eastern Ukraine. Today, we know that there are neo-Nazis basically have strings of connections all the way back to Nazi Germany. So this is what we're up against. Russia is basically, again, just like they did in World War II, fighting the Nazis once again. So who is funding them? More Nazis around the world? I say yes, unfortunately. So they didn't lose. I just had a show with Laura Eisenhower, who's a great granddaughter of General Eisenhower, who was eventually a two-term president of the United States. He is, as she has been terming, the beginning of the White Hats in Q. And basically, he saw that the Nazis had basically gotten control, and that the Nazis came over Washington, D.C. with their little circular craft, their little flying saucers, and basically put German troops into Congress and made them sign an agreement that they basically signed over control to Germans. So we did not win the war. So there's lots of stuff like that out there.
I want to know, why does Donald Trump support Israel if we know that Israel used to belong to Palestine, that land, and they're Zionists. It needs to be given back to Palestine. Why do you think he supports Israel? Do you think they're for optics?
No, I think there's a good element, just like in the United States. Donald Trump is obviously a good element. There's good elements around the world. Uh, we're seeing right now with France sending troops into Ukraine. Did France allow the German troops to come in and occupy France? I don't know. So there's all these instances of where you kind of look at stuff and go, well, maybe there were some bad elements in there, and they allow these things to happen. So we know that Netanyahu is a Zionist bad guy, right? The people of Israel were trying to get him out, and that's when the war started. So that is something that we're looking at now. I believe in Trump. I believe that he is a white hat. He's part of the white hat movement. I'm very firm about that. When I see different things like you're talking about, why is he supporting Israel? Because there are good factions in Israel, and we want to support them. Just like there's good factions in the United States, just like there's good factions in the UK, just like there's good factions all around the world, China, you name it. There are good people, mostly good people. And then there are these small groups of very, very evil people that are controlling us. And they're very, very adept at doing that. They've been doing this for, thousands of years. You see the Rothschilds, you see the here in the United States, the Rockefeller family. These groups basically know how to control consciousness. There's a science behind it, and they use that against humanity. And we are, fighting an uphill battle trying to alert people to these problems. At some point, people get to the point where there's so much resistance on them, so much pain, if you will, that they say no more, and then they push back. That's unfortunate because it doesn't need to go that far if we can alert them to the coming problems.
Have you heard Donald Trump speak anything about Palestine or the Palestinian people?
I have not, but Donald Trump has always been a person of peace, and there were times where I'm very much in the peace frame of mind as well, even though I'm extremely well trained in the art of war on a very, very high level, and also in the art of war on the cosmic realm. So when I see Donald Trump come in and calm things, he's on another level. So I would say that there is a possibility that Donald Trump could come in, just like he's saying he could stop the war in Ukraine. I think he could do the same thing with Palestine. And I think that the people are people all over the world, even though there's a lot of differences between certain groups. I can tell you when I was in the Middle East, I was able to blend in fairly well. But there's a lot of people that don't understand those cultures. I'm very adaptable, but a lot of people have their way of thinking. They think their way of thinking is the best. That's not always the case. And that's what we're seeing right now with Palestine and Israel. So if you have very firm, very hardcore thinking in a certain way, almost like a Nazi type of mentality, which I think is actually happening, you're going to have conflict. And that's what we're seeing around the world right now. Now, we just talked about before the show how a lot of these groups are under threat, and they see the threat against them, and that they're going to and they're losing their power. They're probably losing people. It's not out in the public that some of these people are disappearing, but we can see the results of a lot of people that used to be very prominent have disappeared, and they're gone. And then we see people that don't even look like Joe Biden, does not even look like Joe Biden used to look like. So what is going on there? So a lot of people have all these questions. So there's something going on. At least people can identify and connect with that. So if there's something going on, there's probably something more going on than we know. And I can tell you, after having been, in a lot of these groups and agencies and so forth, that there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. Now, there are a lot of people that expose stuff that get taken down, and we've seen that, throughout time, or they get suppressed, or there's certain things, or they change their tune because otherwise their families are threatened, they are threatened, or so forth. But most of us are, of the opinion that we are up against something very, very evil in the world, and we need to overcome that. So at that point, we can all agree. Now we're looking at, our next generation here in the United States. We're looking at college kids basically aligning with a Hamas mentality. So Hamas, now Palestinian, these are people that are basically occupied by a terrorist organization. So that is what a lot of people don't understand. I have been in many countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, on and on, Libya. And if you have a very hardcore group that has power, they control the people, even though the people are all good, even although the whole people would love to align with the rest of the world. These groups do not want that. They control everything. So we're seeing that around the world. So there in Israel, you have Hamas, which is a very brutal organization that I think is in alignment with the Nazis in the Zionist realm
Yes.
of Israel. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Hebrew, Hamas means violence, and we see that in the Bible. And the other thing as well is that I've noticed, and I'm more spiritual than religious, but I do, tap into the Bible and I look into it, and it also says that in these times that there will be rumors of wars, and this could mean that the deep state are just spreading, fear because they know that their time is coming to an end. They want to keep the, fear up. They want us to be scared and the vibration of the earth very low. Now, with Donald Trump and the White Hats, they all know that, these Rothschild Zionist, sons of Satan, they're the ones that have corrupted Ukraine. They're the ones that have, taken the land from the Palestinians, called it Israel, to confuse us, because Israeli, children of Israel, or if you like, the Israelites, in Hebrew, it means anyone who strives for God. So if you're a man of love, you're a man of peace, irrespective of your nation, you are an Israelite. And they want to trick us to pretend that Israel, you're an Israelite if you're from Israel, but they're Zionists. And I think that Trump is playing optics. I think that if he said anything about Israel, he would be called an anti-Semitic. So he is actually, in my opinion, playing the game of the deep state whilst they're surgically taking them down and exposing them in a different way. What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you mentioned George Soros. Now, George Soros is Jewish, and he basically was used to come after Jews in Germany, and he pointed them out. The Nazis would come in and seize their assets. So maybe that's how George Soros got so wealthy, because they were seizing the assets of Jews. So I think that's one of the things we really need to look at, because he is funding and bankrolling the anti-Zionist, he called anti-Zionist, all right, Jewish, basically, protests in our universities here. So it's very interesting, because 4 years ago, we had the George Floyd riots. And that was basically utilized to disrupt the election process. And unfortunately, a lot of people that were in universities and high schools that were ready to graduate could not graduate because of because of the lockdowns, because of these riots and so forth. Now we're seeing it 4 years later. So we're seeing in some of these universities where they're having these protests, these students are not able to graduate again. It's like the same thing they went through 4 years ago when they were graduating from high school. Now they're in college, getting ready to graduate from college, and they're being stopped out again. It must be very, very frustrating for those students. They're our future. Now, it's all being disrupted. They're trying to control consciousness. They're trying to control the next generation. It is something we really need to be looking at and start to push back on. And I think we've seen a lot of that. I think a lot of states have basically gone in and cleaned up a lot of these Hamas supporting camps. Hamas being the terrorist, right? They're not for good. They're not for the people of Palestine. They're for themselves and controlling the people of Palestine. are the Palestinian people. So Palestine, basically, they should all just get along, Jews and Muslims, which a lot of places they do. Like I said, I've been around the world and I've seen Israelis, Jews, or Jews and Muslims and Christians all get along in a lot of places. It's just when these terrorist organizations come in, when things start to get a little crazy, and then eventually you no longer see Jews, and then you no longer see Christians. So that's the problem we're seeing in the world right now. These radical terrorists, which are, I think, funded by the deep state. And the deep state is trying to control consciousness, trying to control humanity, and they have their armies all over the place. We have to like push back on them.
No, absolutely. These people, they pretend they're Jews. These Zionists, they are the sons of Satan, and they serve the darkness, and they are hiding behind the veil of Judaism. So I want to speak about, I want to talk about the nuclear stuff you mentioned earlier, because I've heard things that this ideology about nuclear, nukes, that they're not real, they're fake. They don't really have nuclear weapons, and that this is just a fear mongering, strategy. What do you think about this?
It's a possibility because I've seen a lot of information on that, like before Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because they basically destroyed Tokyo through carpet bombing, almost like a napalm type of thing. Same thing with Dresden, Germany. They firebombed those cities massively, and far more devastation than happened with the nuclear bombs that were dropped. So there is evidence that says that it's a possibility that that happened. Now, when you look at when they show us a nuclear bomb going off, it does look real. But I mean, we've seen a lot of things that look real, like planes crashing into buildings, a plane disappearing, a jet disappearing into a building. So we know that things can be manipulated as far as like the cameras and so forth. They've been doing that for a very long time. So there is that possibility. I'm not completely against that, but I am aware that because I was trained to utilize those. Who knows? I never set one off myself personally. I never saw one go off, but I have been trained to use them. I have, supposedly seen the results. But they say that if a nuclear bomb goes off, you should not be able to go in that environment for decades upon decades upon decades. Well, Hiroshima has been, plenty of people have been living in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and doesn't seem to be any problems there. So you might be onto something. So we have to be aware that it could be fear mongering. And I totally agree that regardless of whether it's real or not, the fear mongering is there so they can create a scenario, regardless of whether it's a real nuclear blast or not, which would seem like that. Because I've seen these mother of all bombs. They're like these huge bombs that go off. They're not nukes, but they look like nukes. So there is a possibility that this stuff does go on.
No, absolutely. Who knows? I mean, I think a lot of it is fear mongering because, they're trying to keep us suppressed as much as they can. And if they need to lie, they will. They won't hesitate. So now you mentioned that there's also been protests at universities. Why don't you tell us what type of protest this is and how many universities and how big is this?
Yeah, they're different sizes. Could be as several dozen to hundreds of students. They occupy buildings when they're told to evacuate, and then the police come in and basically tear down their camps. Their camps pretty much have the same tents across the country. So it seems like there is funding and there is evidence that Soros groups are funding them, and in fact that's the news right now. Soros groups are funding these protests, and they actually were planning these protests. And I said this many months ago as well, that we're probably going to see these huge Palestinian protests eventually. And sure enough, we're seeing them in the colleges. I think they're going to move to the streets, just like the George Floyd protest. I think that's inevitable. there's really nothing at this point we can do unless we really stand up and stop them. And I don't see the American public ready to do that, because that's going to take a lot of willpower. And I see a lot of people saying we should let them have it's a right to be able to protest. And they're right. It is a right to protest, but there's also that level where you take that protest out of bounds, and then it should be stopped out. And we saw the same thing with the George Floyd protest. They were peaceful protests. A lot of college kids are like, "Oh, we don't have to wear the mask. We can actually go out and socialize again." So it was okay then. You couldn't do it before that because there was a COVID lockdown, and then all of a sudden it was okay. So,
Well, it was okay. It was okay not to wear a mask at the George Floyd protest, but the next day when there was a Trump rally, you had to wear a mask.
it didn't happen though. I was at a lot of Trump rallies, and we never wore masks.
Oh, according to the mainstream media, they were upset. They wanted you to wear a mask, but they were totally
Right.
fine
Good point. Good point.
with protesting BLM, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I mean, yeah, BLM with fires in the background, mostly peaceful protest, and we saw those, and I think we're going to see them again. I said this month ago, we're moving that direction. I mean, there's you talk about the prophets in the Bible that could see far thousands of years in the future. I see a few months, maybe a year or so in the future. I'm just a lightweight when it comes to those guys, but I still see stuff, and this stuff happens. But you don't have to be a prophet to see that this stuff is coming. It's common sense, and that's what we need more of. We need more common sense from people to start to see this stuff and start to react before it happens. So if it happens and then we react, it's too late. So we have to get in front of it. And until we do that, because these guys plan this out, they push and push and push and push and push. I've seen this overseas many times, over and over and over again. I know what the narrative is. I would know what the narrative is, what the CIA Mockingbird was doing overseas. I knew that because I worked for the CIA. And I was like, God, I can't believe the CIA is doing this kind of stuff. But I'm hunting terrorists, and I have to keep people safe that are doing some stuff that I think is shady. But anyway, I saw this stuff going on, and I was like, no way. The people are going to not going to. And then months would go by, just like happens in the United States or UK, whatever, like we saw with COVID. Months, years will go by, and people still wouldn't get it. It was just crazy to me. So I'm seeing the same process again. It's unfortunate. And I'm also seeing a process where they're starting to say, oh, look at all these people. You got the one guy that's got blood in his eyes from bird flu. They're trying to push a bird flu narrative. So we didn't learn from the last COVID lie narrative, and now they're getting ready to launch another one on us. I just saw Chris Cuomo. I don't know if you remember Chris Cuomo used to work for CNN. He was a bad man, let's say that, when it came to coming down on people that didn't get vaccinated. He was hardcore. Well, how about it? He is now having COVID problems. So vaccination problems. He is very sick, and he's having doctors come in. And now he's doing shows with people that have had COVID problems. Is this going to make us feel okay? Those guys are okay now. They're doing the right thing. I say no. I say these guys were bad, and they're going to flip again when it comes time to do the next round.
Oh, absolutely. I think definitely. I think people are going to wake up slowly. I think what's happened to him is a bit like karma. I don't even know if it's part of his terms and conditions with, the military to expose him. I don't know, but we just have to wait and see.
Good point. Yeah.
But Michael, thank you so much for joining me again. I really appreciate our interviews and all the insight you give us. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Yeah, Nicholas, coming up, we're going to see another, I think, more rounds of problems, as if it couldn't get any worse, right? We had a little break, and now we're going to go deeper into it. Just use your intuition, stay in that love vibration. It'll help inform you and keep you out of out of harm's way. And that's what I found in the people that I talked to, yourself included. You're very calm, you're very cool, and you've done very, very well. So I think people can take great insight from us, and stay calm themselves, and move forward and do well in life.
No, absolutely. No, thank you very much. And we'll keep these interviews going every 2 weeks. And because I love these updates. And we'll speak again very soon. And you take care, and
Okay.
God bless you.
God bless you too. Thanks.